fraud has impacted us globally, so much so that we are now having an International Fraud Awareness Week each year. This year, it's taking place between the 12th and 18th of November. In support of the Prevention and Detection Initiative, SAFPS, the Southern African Fraud Prevention Service, has put together a series of interviews with key industry stakeholders to help us understand the current landscape of fraud and how it is actually impacting ourselves and our country's economy. I'm Nazir Garib, the Head of Product Development for SAFPS, and joining me today is Kgothatso Mahlangu, the Head of Fraud Operations Management and Resilience at the African Bank, to discuss the fraud, what exactly is fraud, and how is it impacting us. Hi, Kgothatso. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So just to start off with, tell us a little about yourself and your role at African Bank in fighting fraud.
So I'm the head of fraud operations, as you mentioned, in the operational resilience space, and we are responsible for the overall fraud strategy for the bank, including the prevention strategies, detection strategies, as well as making sure that all the pieces that touch fraud come together to ensure that we ultimately protect our customers.
That is great. So let's quickly start off by explaining to our consumers what exactly is fraud, what constitutes fraud, and perhaps give us a few examples.
So fraud constitutes any deliberate deception to secure an unfair or unlawful gain. So, this can include various forms such as identity theft, phishing scams, credit card fraud, and as well as, what we can call schemes and scams. So, one of the common examples, which is phishing, is where individuals receive deceptive emails that appear to be from reputable sources, aiming to obtain sensitive information like passwords or financial details such as, your banking online credentials. And the other one, which has been more common, especially in the financial services industry, has been phishing. And this is where an individual a fraudster rather, will social engineer the customer. They will call them and tell them they're probably from, a reputable company, as I said, and then they will trick them into actually revealing details that they're not supposed to reveal that will compromise them.
It's actually quite scary to know that these fraudsters and scammers are actually impersonating companies that we are trusting and that we are holding dear in our everyday lives. It is difficult for us to sometimes differentiate between the scam and the real entity.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the last few years. SAFPS noticed that there's an average of a 37% year-on-year growth in the number of incidents that's being reported. What do you think is actually contributing to this growth, and how exactly is it impacting our economy?
There's several factors that we can note. The first thing for me would be the increase in reliance on digital platforms and technology, coupled with the sophistication of fraudsters, because the more technology advances, the more the technology that they use to scan customers also increases. And with the pandemic shifting, more activities are now online, and there has been, a rise in cybercrime. There's definitely been a direct relationship, in, the use of technology and cybercrime. This impacts our economy, because of financial losses. And it's also eroding trust, in institutions. Customers are no longer trusting institutions because they believe that they needed to be protected. But the question always remains, what have you done as an institution to try and protect me as a customer, or a consumer. And I think right now, if you look at how the economies have been performing, things haven't been so great, if we can look at the last 5 years. And what does it mean? That fraudsters are also looking for ways to enrich themselves and to make as much money like everybody else. So I think that is why we are where we are right now.
I think also the fact that you did mention technology is becoming a bigger player in the manner in which fraud's being committed. The
Yeah.
South African statistics, or Stats SA rather, has alluded to the fact that only a third of our population is digitally illiterate. And I think maybe the fraudsters are actually using
Yeah.
this lack of understanding of how this technology is working and the risks associated to it, to actually manipulate and defraud our consumers.
Totally.
All right, so let's take a look a little bit at scams in particular. SAFP has noticed, again, 150% increase in the amount of scams that has taken place since last year, which obviously is a type of fraud that is hitting our consumers very hard. What do you make of the changes that's taking place in the UK right now with regards to authorized push payment fraud, which is a particular type of scams, and the fact that their policy is now actually holding the banks responsible for reimbursing their victims? Do you see this playing out in South Africa?
I mean, the reality is that in the banking sector, fraud has catalyzed, based on the transformative changes in the way that we conduct transactions. The introduction of stringent, security measures, biometric authentication, AI-powered fraud detection, has become necessary, safeguards for customers. And I think that is where that policy actually is coming from, to say how do we protect, the customers. Internationally, the trends are similar, with an emphasis on enhancing, cybersecurity and, overall, what are you doing to protect the customers? What the UK's policy is doing is actually holding banks responsible, in terms of reimbursing customers for authorized push payments. And it's an interesting model, if I can call it that. And, it places accountability on financial institutions and encourages a more customer-centric approach. Whether South Africa will adopt a similar policy, I mean, it depends on various factors, including our regulatory environment, industry collaboration. I'm not seeing it as, one bank saying we are actually going to do this and the other one saying we're not. We definitely need to come together as a collective, and decide what is it that needs to happen. And I guess the need to protect the customer is what is in the center of this thing, which I believe that, we are all, when we say we are fraud function, the ultimate thing is to protect the customer.
That is definitely the aim and the goal. And hopefully we can protect the consumer's money as well in that process. So
Totally.
definitely. So let's talk a little bit about the banking world in particular. You come from a truly South African bank, and fraud has changed the way we conduct banking today. Previously, it was all about card fraud. Is this still the case? Locally, are we seeing the same movements as it's happening internationally, or is it a little different?
So it's quite similar. The only thing that I would say, as we've been making research, is that in South Africa, the fraudster want immediate gratification.
Yes.
When we looked at the American context as an example, it was more of an EFT that will clear within a day or two. But when we compare with what's happening here, it's real-time clearance, which is, one of the biggest things.
Yes.
These are some of the technology, some of the features that we actually never had. But now that we have them, the fraudsters are saying, listen, we want the money now. And when it comes to things like real-time clearance, you cannot reverse the transaction. So, the money is out um, immediately. So, though the trends are quite similar in terms of the fact that it's authorized, push fraud, payment fraud, but I think it's just pushing us, all of us, to look at what is real-time fraud monitoring. How do we tailor make an experience, to a customer to be able to pick up any, suspicious behavior. So I just think that we most probably in the same boat with everyone globally.
I think so too. In many cases, South Africa does lead the banking industry in a lot of the aspects. In terms of banking, I think we lead, especially when it comes to our policies in terms of banking. I think this change in the UK is a one up on us from a long time. But I'm hoping that we are definitely going to be able to set in some change for ourselves and our consumers as well. But while this entire process is taking place, and while our banking industry is looking into solutions to actually help hedge the risk, what is it that us as consumers can actually do to manage our exposure? How do we protect ourselves?
The most important thing is to take proactive steps to manage, exposure to fraud. This includes, regular monitoring of your accounts. Some banks will offer you your SMS notification for all your transactions, but some banks you have to opt into it. So that is some of the things that customers can definitely do. The use of strong passwords and unique passwords. Right now, our mobile devices are enabling us to use two-factor authentication. Use your face and something else, and a PIN as an example. And also being cautious about unsolicited communication and keeping, software, updated to prevent vulnerabilities. And if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be
It
true.
probably is. Yes, it probably is.
Yeah.
So, in terms of that, SAFPS has also taken in a few extra steps. We introduced YIMA, which was a scams prevention platform that we put out for consumers, where you as a consumer can actually log on. Kgothatso spoke a little bit earlier about scammers impersonating trusted companies. Go on, take the URLs that are being provided for you, use the things like the DNS scanner on the YIMA website, and check to see if in fact it's the real website before you click on it and land up on a phishing site for that matter. I think, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Yes, and I was going to say that, it's important for a customer to act very swiftly when
Yes.
they also feel that they've been defrauded. Very critical.
That is exactly where I was going with it. If you don't do it now, you are probably going to suffer a bigger loss than originally anticipated. Also, knowing where to report the incident is important. And these are part of the initiatives that on YIMA we have, I think, solutions that every banking institution also puts in place. So being proactive in that perspective is also going to help you save yourself from a bigger loss or a bigger impact with regards to an incident.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's important to make sure that compromised accounts are, are frozen, changing your password, reporting to the relevant authorities. And I think one big example would be, a lost or stolen phone. Consumers will run to their mobile network operator to block the SIM, block the device, forgetting the amount of information that is sitting, in that device. Yeah, so call your bank as an example when you lose a mobile phone, because our lives are sitting in there.
That is true. Your entire life is in your pocket. And when it's lost, you just gave it away, basically. If you didn't have a proper PIN number, I think
Yeah.
a four-digit PIN number on your phone no longer is worth the effort. You need to actually look at having something that's a minimum of 8 characters in order to protect
Mm,
yourself. And I think Kgothatso also mentioned earlier two-factor authentication. Don't discount it. It's very important. But that's it. Thank you so much for your time. I think helping us understand the different frauds and the different landscapes of how it's actually impacting us and what it is we can do about it as consumers makes us a little more positive towards hoping or understanding the risk and hoping that we actually can actively prevent ourselves from falling victim. Before we close, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to pass on?
yeah, I just think that even beyond the International Fraud Awareness Week, we've got, your your Black Friday coming.
Yes.
We've got your busy Christmas holiday season. Consumers just need to be very vigilant around these periods and just safeguard themselves. And we'll still repeat, if it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true.
That is, in fact, a fact. So definitely be aware. Nothing comes for free. So protect yourselves. Beware, especially of the seasonal scams that are definitely going to be coming out now. I
Yeah.
think we all get a bit laxy-daisy on holiday mode towards the end of the year. But be proactive, people. Use the YIMA website, go to the banking platforms, check the information that they've provided for you online
Yeah.
as well, and be safe. I hope this session has actually given you some feedback on what is happening with regards to fraud, how the changes are taking place locally and internationally, and possibly how it is you can protect yourself. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope to see you in our following sessions.
Thank you so much for having me.